So I've been taking photos now for nearly 5 years, and I've been lucky enough to travel the world with my camera. And I'd say for the most part, once I was able to gather enough money, I've been using the same camera pretty much the entire time. Of course, trying different lenses, focal lengths, primes, zooms, but I've mostly stuck with what I know. This right here is the Canon R5, also known as the GOAT shooter, the GOAT hybrid mirrorless camera. Now, as you all know, I am a native Sony shooter, and recently I've been getting a little bit bored, and it sounds strange of using the same camera, the same lens every single day. I had a bit of a block, and I don't know, I was getting bored. I decided to do a little swap with my friend Ollie, who is a Canon shooter. We decided to swap equipment. I went on a ski trip to France, and I only took this setup, which you see right in front of me. No Sony gear came with me. I'm not gonna lie, I fell in love with it. Now, usually when I go on trips, I'm always taking like my camera bag filled with lenses. It made me excited about photography again. It challenged me in different ways because I edit photos for a living, and I have been editing strictly Sony photos, I guess, for about 3 years. There is just something about the Canon that I can't really put my finger on. And I know that there is a lot of debate whether Sony's better for video, Canon's better for photo, Canon has better color science. And to be honest, I kind of agree that Canon color science is better than Sony from an editor's standpoint, because you know, I work with photos and editing pictures all the time. For any like muggle, if you saw 2 pictures, one taken on a Canon, one taken on a Sony, edited side by side, a lot of people would not be able to tell the difference. For me, I got back from my ski trip, loaded all the pictures into the computer, and I had such a good time editing them. Okay, so a few things that I liked about the R5. Firstly, the way that the grip is. As you can see here, my hands are fully, all fingers are tucked in, whereas in the Sony, my pinky starts to kind of fall off. Build quality as well. I know Ollie, I've been friends with him for ages. He's had this camera for nearly 2 years now. It's been to a lot of places. It's been to the Dubai desert. It's been to Madeira and mountains. It's been to oceans, cliffs, Scotland, everywhere. And it's got very few wear and tear, which I'm quite surprised at because my Sony's got a lot of wear and tear, whereas this has hardly any. I did fear that I was going to fall with this in my bag, and luckily I didn't have a fall that entire trip, so thank you God. This held up really well. I had it in like a little side pouch, sort of like here, and I could just easily get out of that side pouch, take some snaps, put it back in. Kind of takes me back to the 1DX days, you know. With this being a bit bigger than my Sony's, I didn't have that much of a problem. I took pretty much one, I think every day I went out, I took about 2 batteries, one in the camera and one spare. And a lot of the time I only actually ended up using one. So the battery life on these is really good. As it was quite cold up there as well, I thought I would have ended up using 2, but I didn't. In terms of the interface, the buttons and the menu system, I didn't really have that hard of a time navigating my way around. I mean, for anyone that's used to using a Sony, you can probably get a grip to using this after an hour or so. One thing that I hated though, is there's a little feature on this which is called touch shutter, and I couldn't find where to turn it off, but pretty much you touch the screen and it takes a photo. I don't know why they even decided to put that feature on the camera. Something that really stood out for me about this camera, especially when shooting in harsh direct sunlight, was the LCD screen. It's so beautiful, it's crystal clear, it's super bright. Obviously it's got the electric viewfinder as well as the screen, but I didn't have any issues when seeing the screen, especially when, you know, shooting in that direct sunlight. You've got reflections of the snow, not an issue whatsoever. This paired with the 45 megapixel CMOS sensor built into the R5, pairing that with the 24-70 RF was just the dream combo. The autofocus was snappy and sharp. I didn't feel the need as well to like use any tighter lenses. I felt like 70 was a really good medium because I could crop into those photos and still retain great detail. This might sound really strange, but it hasn't been until recently I sort of have found and adapted my own edit style, which I want to use on all of my photos going forward so that my Instagram feed looks consistent. When I build my website, all of my photos are edited pretty much the same. I really liked editing pictures differently. and it was great. It kind of taught me different techniques of editing, but now I really want to adapt that style that I found and kind of make that consistent throughout all of my work. And that is what I've done with these pictures right here. But I like to bring down a lot of the contrast, the shadows. I like to lift the shadows, bring down the clarity, the texture in a lot of these pictures. And then with that, I desaturate a lot of the colors. Don't use really too heavy tone curves either. Probably a slight S curve. I raise that bottom fade up just ever so slightly, and then that gives me a nice base to work with. Something to keep in mind, especially when you're shooting in harsh direct sunlight, is you want to expose your highlights properly. My shutter was like 8,000 at times because it was so bright, but there was no issue in, you know, even if I did overexpose, bringing down those highlights, and it still retained the detail in the sky because the Canon has such good dynamic range. I was able to do that. I think I overexposed in a few photos I'll show you on the screen, and I managed to bring down those highlights and still retain that detail. The bigger the S shape, I feel like the more contrasty the photo looks. So with these particular pictures, I only gone with a slight S, nothing too major. The texture and the clarity sliders don't land the photo to where I want to be. I kind of want to bring those back, which is why for certain pictures, especially in this sort of category, I'll probably go a bit more overboard with the contrast, whereas a lot of the time kept the contrast and that clarity to a minimum. So once I sort of made that first edit style and I had my base on and I made all my adjustments, I then copied that preset, which made it a lot easier, just onto all of the pictures, and then I can sort of tweak them as I go along, so I don't have to completely re-edit each one, because most of the time we were in the same sort of environment. It was outside, it was sunny, we're in the snow. That preset that I made for this particular trip just worked for all of the photos that I took, especially in that sort of sunny environment. Something that you will notice by giving off this sort of faded look is by me reducing the contrast and putting up the blacks in my tone curve. Bring up that bottom bit of the S curve, gives it that fade, but then the contrast is brought back, then the blacks are pushed up, retains a lot of detail, especially, you know, if your subject is wearing dark clothing, keeps that crushed black look but brings out the shadows, if that makes sense. And then the finishing touches, what I'll do is all of my selects, I'll open them into Photoshop and I'll just get rid of any distractions in the background. Like there's these ugly orange bollards, people in the background. I just like to get rid of any distractions so that the pictures just look a lot cleaner, a lot more sleek, and just way more professional in my opinion. And that is pretty much it. Hopefully that was informative for you lot watching. A very brief sort of walkover on how I edited these pictures, a few techniques that I did, so hopefully you can give these a try. That is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been a great tutorial. It's super late right now. What's the time? Fucking 1 in the morning. If you did like this video, please don't forget to leave a like, rating, subscribe down below if you are new, and I will see you very soon in the next one. Take care. Peace.
Can you tell everyone what you're going to be doing today?
Sit in the hot tub.
Okay.
Gonna eat up again.
Oh,
Very
do you know
French.
about that?
Oh.
Cultural.